Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Boom, and welcome to the Big Honker Podcast, brought to you by Lucky Duck. I am Jeff Stanfield with the world-famous Andy Shaver.
My voice is giving out a little bit from screaming at all these little booger-picking kids at baseball practice.
I figured it up the other day. I sat down and thought about it. All the coaching I did from the time you and Zach and Payne were little, and my record as a coach on y'all sports teams was 107 and 19. 107 and 19 was my winning. I'm telling you what, I am the.
Lou Holtz should have called you.
Lou did, and I was busy that day. But just to let you know that I expect you to have that many losses within your first 2 years. So, anyways, let's go.
Listen, we were bred different back then, Jeff.
We had more talent.
From the land of
You want me to do
the
our
Vikings.
introduction here?
No, I'll do it. So, from the land of the Vikings, Mr. Jack Zimmerman, how are you today?
Good, guys. Glad to be on here. This is awesome.
From Cleveland, Minnesota.
From Cleveland, Minnesota.
Where they don't have any Muslims.
Butts up next to Elysian, Minnesota, where the great Dane Raymelt hails from. We were talking about him before the podcast. Dane worked for us for like 6 or 7 years. So there's in the introduction, I get this question all the time. In the introduction, the geese, you hear the geese, you hear the gunshots. Or no, you hear the geese, then you hear this whine. How is it? Geese, gunshots, whine. Doesn't matter. Everybody's asked me, is that a goose? Or what is that? What is that high-pitched whine that's in the introduction? That is actually Dane's dog, Bear. And that's the whine in there. So, small world.
That's called a lot of drive right there. They just want to get that bird.
He was excited. And so the video that I saw of you had Moose. Is Moose still with us?
Yeah, so it's actually kind of a wild story. I was supposed to bring Moose up to Maine with me to shoot that, and my airlines actually got switched last minute, so I didn't get to bring Moose with me. So that wasn't the real Moose in the Mossy Oak video. But Moose is still with us today. Yeah, he's still in the field all the time with me. Yeah.
To give a background check on everybody.
Yeah.
Jack is an American hero. He fought for our country. He is a hunter. He's an outdoorsman. He is a true hero. LeBron James, who can't get his ass in the playoffs, is not a fucking American hero, and I want to say that right now. Jack, you're on a video from Mossy Oak Outdoors, right?
Yeah, we shot that up in Maine with Smoldering Lake Outfitters, Dave Hentosh, and the Veterans of Field Foundation.
And that was it came out Veterans Day 2018, correct?
Yes, correct.
I would like first to thank you for your service.
I appreciate it. And whenever anybody thanks me for my service, I always say it was honestly the greatest honor in my life. And I couldn't believe I was getting paid to do it. And it's hard to find things nowadays that give me the same purpose as I had when I was able to just wear that uniform every day and serve this country.
Well, I watched the video, and I'm not going to lie. I got misty-eyed. I cried. I got tears. I got a son that's in the Army right now. And my wife, she watched it, and she cried. And it was very touching. And I wish everyone would go to YouTube and look up Jack Zimmerman, and it's veteran
Honor. Honor is what it called.
Honor series.
Yeah.
Honor series, yeah.
And watch that video. And when you get your ass at home and you look in your yard and all the freedoms you have, it's gentlemen just like Jack and the ladies that have sacrificed for us. I want you to tell us the story, if you don't mind, about that day.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so just kind of a little backstory, even just to getting to that day, as I joined the Army in 2009 after I was being as an electrician for, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years, whatever it was. And I just had the urge to serve, and I seen what other guys were doing overseas. And I went to the recruiter station one day and said, hey, I want to go to Iraq or Afghanistan. I want to be on the front lines. How do I get there? And the guy's like, don't move.
Don't move a muscle. You're in the right place.
Got one. And so I joined, and I went down to Fort Benning, did infantry school, airborne school, got my wings, and I went right to the 101st Airborne Division. And within a couple months, June 6, 2010, I'm on my way to Afghanistan with the 101st Airborne Division. It's pretty awesome. I got to deploy on D-Day from, Fort Campbell. It's just so historic, And jumped on a plane, flew over there, got to the Kandahar Province, which is like the state in the country of Afghanistan. And then I went to the Zari district, which is the county, essentially, of Kandahar Province. And that's where the Taliban was first originated, and that was like their home, and they didn't want to give it up easy. And it was a dogfight down there day in, day out. It was brutal. If you weren't gunfighting, you were jumping around IEDs, and it was a super rough area. And we were there for we got there in June, so October rolled around. That's when I had my worst day in Afghanistan. I lost my best friend. He stepped on IED over there and killed him instantly. And the only reason we were out there that day was to get him home to see his daughter, just to kind of lay the perspective of how I look at life today, of how lucky I am to be here, and like, I had, at the time I owned in my name a 96 Bonneville, and I had a girlfriend at the time, you know what I mean? He had a wife and a home and a daughter and all this stuff, So it like really lays perspective of like how hard it was to come home and like face some of these things. But, he was killed that day, and we just had to keep pushing on and just keep, just rolling. I mean, you just can't really stop over there, It's just one of those things. And fighting kind of slowed down in like November, December. Kicked off like New Year's Day again. The fighting was on, and I got to come home. I always joke somewhere between the Super Bowl and the Daytona 500 because that's how I, keep track of things in my life. And came home. I spent 2 weeks here, and the last day before I went back, I always joke about this too, is I got down on a knee and I asked my wife to marry me, and that was my last chance to do it. And glad I took that opportunity, and I was like, hey, will you marry me, and can I get a ride to the airport in the morning?
And she was 19 at the time?
Yeah, she was 19 at the time.
Wow.
And I actually went back to Afghanistan on her birthday, March 1st. And I went back to Afghanistan, worked my way back, and then it was March 9th, 2011 then, and I was up in a guard tower. I got up there like 4 in the morning, and hung out there for like 4 hours, and I got relieved off my shift. And I came out of the guard tower and was walking back into the tent. And I remember walking past the guys that morning, and everybody was always sitting outside. We like had a canopy at the edge of the tent, and the guys always sit out there and smoke and tell jokes and eat and just hang out out there. It's kind of like the hangout spot. And I remember walking past the guys and kind of laughing with a few of the guys, and went in the tent, and I dropped all my gear, and I went to the front of the tent, and there's a giant whiteboard up there, and that's kind of where it said what we were doing for the day. And I looked at the whiteboard, and I seen us going on patrol. And I mean, I love going on patrol. If there was anything going on, I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted in on it. I volunteered for everything. And that's just kind of who I was. I was like, I was here to serve my country, and if whatever I can do, like, sign me up. And so I was excited. Every time I seen us going on patrol, I was excited. And so I seen I had some time, and I went and laid down in my bunk, and I took my boots off, and I was laying in my bunk, and I was going through my camera looking at some pictures and stuff. And the last picture on my camera I took, I had my feet crossed up on the bunk, and for whatever reason, I felt like I needed to pull the trigger on my camera, and I took a picture of my feet crossed up at the end of my bunk.
Wow.
Just weird stuff, lead up to this, And so my buddy walks by and says, hey, we're going to go get a briefing for the mission. Come outside, and, we're going to go for the mission. So we go out there. We find out there's a cache that we're going to go looking for. It's got their guns, their ammo, their IED making materials. We're going to go steal it from them. So perfect. Love that stuff, And so we went and put my gear on. We went to the the entrance point, and walked out, and they counted us out, and my team was out in front. And when I say my team, I was just on Sergeant Hurley's team that day. And he was our team leader. And so it was 2 riflemen, Sergeant Hurley, and then me on like the right flank. And there was a gun team in between us, and then there was another team just like us, and there was some other people, like our first sergeant was out there, and like their RTO, and there's a bunch of radio people and stuff like that in the middle. And so that's all we're going out there with. And we start pushing out, and we go to a village that we had been to before and talk to them and move on. Now we're getting close to the village that we think this cache is in. And we're moving up to the edge of this village, and I remember there's a huge berm on the north end of town. And I walk up on top of that, and my team leader says, hey, run up on top of that berm and make sure that there's nobody laying on the other side of it ready to ambush us. And Roger. So I run over there, and I run up there, and I look in. I see 2 guys running into town, and I'm like, hey, there's the guys we're looking for. They're up to no good. And all of a sudden I looked down, and I was actually standing on top of an IED right then and there, and they were putting one in. And we're assuming that they were going to get us, shoot at us, get us to jump onto that berm and then blow the berm, right? And so all of a sudden I jumped off of that IED, ran all the way down to where the end of the berm was, and I seen the building those guys ran into. And my team leader went up and put a charge on that IED right away, and he blew it up. And as soon as he blew it up, they started shooting at us, thinking we were shooting at them. And gunfight went on for a little while, and helicopters came in and started throwing hellfires everywhere, and made super light work that day. And we hung out for a little bit and decided we're going to head back to our base. And so what we did now was a reverse order of movement. So my team was in the front on the way out there, and now they put me in the back. And so now we're walking in the back, and we start heading north to give us a little standoff from this village. And we find a good place to cross the ditch. And my buddy Vandenbosch whips out the minesweeper, scans the whole area that we're going to jump across, and says it's good to go. And we all start jumping across one by one. And me being a saw gunner, I was the last guy to cross, pulling rear security for everybody. So all of a sudden, everybody's across, and they say, "Yep, come on, we got you." And I jump across the ditch, and we start fanning back out. And my team leader says, "Hey, you get on the left flank. That's the side of the village. That's the village side of our formation." And so I start running out on the left flank, and I'm literally running in my buddy Abbott's footsteps. And as I'm running along, catching up, and I start falling into where I'm at, and just kind of walking with the pace that we are. My team leader says, "Hey, we're getting ICOM chatter that they're gonna hit us," and he always had a really good intuition of where they're going to hit us from. And so I said, "Where do you think they're going to hit us from?" He says, he kind of starts pointing out some areas, and really, he goes, I was like, "You really think we're going to get hit from there?" And he goes, "I don't know, Jackie boy, I don't." Wham! And I stepped right on the IED right then and there out in that field. And I found myself go flipping through the air, and there were so many things that, you could get hit by over there. You could get hit by a recoilless rifle or a mortar, or, the A&A, the Afghan army that was with us. Like, you just get rowdy and fire off RPG and hit you with the backblast, Right. You just never knew those guys, And so it was just, you didn't really know, and you could have stepped on an IED, and you just have no idea as you're flipping through the air, and you can feel the heat crawl up your back, and it just feels like 10,000 little fingers just crawling up your back, and it's so hot. And you just remember flipping, and you're just like, is this thing ever going to end? It's like a bad dream, And it just kind of almost becomes surreal almost as you're flipping. And finally I hit the ground, and I was joking, thank God I landed on my neck, because that's about all I had left, And landed on my neck, and I was looking over at my left arm. My whole left bottom side of my left arm is completely blown out, and I could see it's bleeding pretty bad. And my first aid kit's also on my left side, and when I landed, I felt my shoulder pop. So I couldn't get my arm rotated back, and my hand was pretty jacked up too. So my fingers, one of my ring fingers were ripped off, and I was trying to get my hand back to my first aid kit, but I couldn't get it back there to it. And I was like, I really need to get this arm tourniqueted, not knowing how bad everything really was in my situation yet. And I reach over to my right side of my night vision pouch, and I'm trying to rip this pouch open, and I can't get it open. And I look over, and from like the middle of my forearm is just at a 90-degree hanging down, and every time my heart beats, I could see the blood spraying out from the back of my arm. And I'm like, oh fuck, I knew I was in bad shape. Good. Yeah, that's kind of like shit out of luck, and I have no idea how bad the whole situation is. I'm trying to figure this out. I can't hear anything. It's just straight buzzing in my ears. It's you can see the tracer rounds go over my head, so I know that we're returning fire to somebody. And I'm just laying out here trying to figure out really what's going on. I stayed conscious this whole time. And
is there any pain at this point? Is there any?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I feel like somebody just hit me in the guts with like a giant baseball bat. I just kind of feel curled up. My back feels burnt. My back feels hot. And like you're just super tingly. You just feel like extreme tingly everywhere. And like something's going on, but like it hurts. But like not like. It's kind of like you kind of feel like you got to man up at the time. Like when something really hurts, it hurts. Like there's things that like you stub your toe in the corner of the bed, and that might hurt worse than
right. But you're not feeling the pain in your arm just yet. You're just kind of like your body's in shock.
It's an overall.
But you're not like, okay, this hurts, this hurts, this hurts, this hurts. You're just kind of like, okay, everything is heightened.
Yeah, you're just trying to assess what's going on, and even half the battle is just trying to figure out like you can't even focus on how bad everything hurts because you're that you're in the middle of a battlefield. You know that something just happened to you, and you know that you're the last person that they're going to take care of. Like you have to go finish the fight and then take care of your wounded. Like that's how you know how it goes, So you're like, I need to perform self-aid, and when you realize you don't have any hands to perform self-aid, that's when you're like, this is bad, And I didn't even know the extent yet. So all of a sudden, my buddy Daniels, he comes sliding in on top of me. And he jumps on top of me and he starts tourniqueting my arm, rips open my first aid kit. And I'll never forget how shaky his hands were. I just remember him trembling, and just trying to reassure me. He's like, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Just over and over again. And I remember him ripping open my first aid kit and grabbing all the tourniquets out of it. And he started tourniqueting my left arm off first. And he got that tourniqueted off real good. And I remember him starting to working on my right. And he was trying to get the one started on the right. And that's about the time that Doc showed up. And right before Doc showed up, the whole time I was like, dude, you got to get off my boys. Like, you're sitting right on my nuts. Like, that's what it felt like he was kneeling right on my boys, you know? And he's like, no, man, I have to stay here in this crater with you. But what he was doing is he had his knees in my femoral arteries trying to pinch those off while he was tourniqueting my arms, right? So all of a sudden, Doc comes over and he cuts my rack off me and then pulls my tab on my plates to drop them. And as soon as he did that, I sat up because I was thinking, I'm getting out of this let's get off this damn battlefield. Like, right. We got to move to cover, you know, like, let's go find some cover. And that's when I sat up to get out of there. And the first thing I seen was the blood because I was laying in the crater. I just seen how much blood there was. And I was like, there's got to be more than just me, you know what I mean? Like, you know, for how much blood I seen. But then I realized that my right leg was completely tore off, and my left leg from like the knee down looked like a Halloween decoration, like meat just clean blown off, like bright white leg. And my boot was still kind of like there. And I started thinking to myself, and I was trying to figure out if I could hop on that to get out of there. Because I knew it would take 4 guys to carry a litter and 2 guys, you know, I could just like put my arms up on somebody's shoulders and like, you know, drag me across the field that way. I didn't know, you know. And I didn't realize how fast I was going to go deteriorate either, you know. As I was laying there and I kind of seen that, I was there like, oh, no, you shouldn't have seen that, you know. And you can tell, you know. And guys are starting to talk to me, you know, and they're talking like the most ridiculous stuff. Like me and Daniels were going to move in together once we got back from this deployment. And he's like, you're still bringing the couch, right? Like, you're just trying to think of anything to say, you know, at the time. And I remember we were talking about bows at the time because that's all you had to talk about was things you were going to get when you got home. Because, you know, we're going to make a full like $19,000 while we were over there. No kidding. So, I mean, you're just dreaming of, you know, they were finally having all this cash in your life, you know, just, you know what I mean? And, so you're like, oh man, I'm gonna drop $1,000 on a bow for sure. So they're just talking about stuff like that, you know. And finally, I was like, I just can't talk anymore. My mouth was so dry, and I remember bitching to Doc. I was like, dude, just give me some gauze with some water on or something. Like, just give me some water. I do not want to die this thirsty, you know. And I just remember like Doc was putting a ratchet strap then on my right leg to try to tourniquet that leg off because there was like nothing left of it, you know. And you remember him reaching up inside me and just grabbing everything he could and yanking down and how bad it hurt to grab that artery. And he got it and got a ratchet strap ratcheted. And I just remember bitching how tight it was. I was like, bro, it's too tight. He's like, the blood stopped. I don't give a shit what you think. You know, I'm like, no, I think we can loosen it a little bit. Like, it hurts.
Okay, so hold on. So he reaches inside of your leg.
What was left of it, yeah.
Find your femoral artery.
Well, just grabbed whatever he could.
Pulled it out. And then
pulled down whatever he could. Just grab down
whatever he could grab. Meat, muscle.
He knew he had to get it.
And
he knew he had to get it.
And he put a ratchet strap on it.
He had a ratchet strap style tourniquet that he made back home that he had with him, and just ratcheted that thing down. And I just remember just like, just cranking on how bad that thing would hurt, you know. And I just remember getting more and more tired. I just got to the point where I couldn't even talk anymore, you know. I just had nothing. I just couldn't do anything. I just remember shaking my head left, right. Then I just tell myself left, right, trying to stay awake. And I just started seeing my whole life flash before my eyes, you know. And, I mean, stuff as young as 4 or 5 years old, like playing ball with my friends, you know, all the way through, like, high school, like playing basketball, you know, like. Yeah, obviously there wasn't too many good memories from school, so not a lot of those. But, you know, all the best times with your friends, you know, drinking with your buddies and, you know, all the fun stuff that, you know, you did growing up, you know, shooting that first deer, like all those things in my life that, you know, I seen all these things flashing. And what I realized at that point in my life was, and it was like a really at first it was kind of sad realization, was I was realizing at this point in my life as I was dying, was that all these things that flashed before my eyes, it wasn't like a new car, it wasn't a house, it wasn't nothing flashy, it was just literally experiences with my friends. It was like just and that's kind of what I realized at that point in my life was like, that's what we're living for, is like those things, you know. And all of a sudden I heard this woof, 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 woof. And I thought, man, that's a chopper. That's coming to get me. I mean, I can't be the guy that dies right when that thing gets here. And I remember him like rolling me up on my left side, and them sliding the litter underneath me and sliding me back down on top of it. And Doc the whole time trying to get a needle started in my neck, trying to give me some fluids. And they picked me up, and I looked down, my foot's bouncing right on my stomach as they're hauling me across the field. And they just whipped it on, you know, it's coming with me. And and that's where it landed. And they're hauling me across the field, and I remember how bad it hurt. And I was like, this is going to kill me. And I remember them sliding me in the chopper. And I remember Doc yelling, I put 2 tourniquets on each limb. And I just remember the flight medic going, I don't give a shit, we got to go. And right about then, I realized what was going on because I could hear the rounds then ripping off the chopper.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the choppers get shot up. And then about the time we took off, I looked over and I seen Sergeant Hurley sitting there, my team leader, and I realized that he was laying there. And I thought he was dead for sure. I thought he was dead. And it kind of dawned on me that I stepped on this thing and I killed him, you know? And all of a sudden he wakes up and he looks at me and I'm like, oh my God, he's alive, you know? And he looks at me and he's like brutally honest with me. He's like, bro, you don't look good. You're going to die, you know?
Holy shit.
What had happened was a big hunk of steel come flying out of there. It bounced off his shoulder, hit him in the head, gave him about the worst concussion a guy can get. And he just, busted his shoulder all the hell, you know? But overall, mostly was fine, you know, besides taking the big hunk of steel off the head too. But he had such a bad concussion. He was just being brutally honest with what he was seeing, you know? And I was like, I know, man, I'm not good. And I remember the flight medic about that same time jumped on top of me and took his like mask off or whatever. And he's like, this is going to hurt. And I was like, whatever, man. I couldn't talk. I mean, that's completely out. And he jumps on top of me and punches the deal right into my sternum. And I just remember being like, oh shit, that hurts so bad. I'm so alive. Like I still have so much life in me, you know?
What was it? Adrenaline?
It was like a fast one. So you could start an IV going in my chest then, because they just couldn't get IV on any of my veins because I just had no blood left in me. So he punches this deal into my bone to start giving me fluid. And I was like, oh man, I'm so alive. And I just remember him like squeezing the bag out with both hands over top of me and just draining this bag out right into my chest, essentially. It was going to my body. And it made me feel so good that by the time we landed at the airfield, I was able to tell him my name, my social, my date of birth. And I was like, if he asked me my mom's maiden name, I know this dude's opening a credit card, right? He's like, this guy's going to die. Like, I'm going to get a bunch of shit off Amazon quick, you know? And, so we landed at the airfield, and I just remember when the helicopter was shutting off, listening to the blades come all the way to a stop. And it just kind of gave me a moment to kind of reflect on the day and just kind of gather my bearings of everything that had just happened. And all of a sudden the door ripped open on the chopper and they slid me out of the back of the chopper and put me in the back of the truck. And I'll never forget, on my left side was my anesthesiologist and on my right was my surgeon. And the anesthesiologist was talking to me first and he's like, hey, what's your name? He's just kind of seeing how coherent I was. I really honestly, for the shape that I was in, I was feeling pretty good, you know? And he's like, are you allergic to anything? And I was like, yes, penicillin. And he's like, not really worried about that right now. And I was like, no, but seriously though, I get hives and I don't have a hand to itch with, you know? Like, it'd be terrible. And the surgeon looked at me and he's like, hey man, if you can stay awake for 5 more minutes, I'll promise you your life. And I was like, deal. Wow. What's the downside to that? He's like, just stay awake for me, man. Like, anything you got to do, just stay awake.
Man, this hurts me so much. Listen. Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
It's tough.
And that guy really gave me the confidence, that I needed at that time. Like, he's like, if you can do it, man, just do it, I remember listening to the truck, like the beeper on the truck start backing up, and we back up and all of a sudden the doors rip open on the truck and he starts slapping me out of my litter. And I remember looking over because I remember all the time we were training, you get your buddy on a litter, and as soon as you were done with the drill, you just dump them, right? It's just a joke all the time. I just remember them sliding me out of the truck, and I was like, oh man, just out of pure, reaction, from your buddies always doing it to you. I was getting ready to brace myself for somebody to flip me off the litter, And I just remember looking down and seeing this little cart with 2 wheels on it, and all of a sudden they set me on this thing, and all of a sudden we're flying down the highway. And I just remember it was light, hard right. And they pulled me into the operating room and they picked me up off this litter. And I just remember them with the way they grabbed me, at that point I kind of realized how much was not left of me. You know what I mean? The way that they had to brace all my arms and stuff. And I was like, damn, I'm jacked up, And they set me on that operating room table, and I just remember thinking dude, we got F-35 fighter jets. We got these nukes we can hit anybody from anywhere in the world with, on a dime, and all this stuff. We don't have heated operating room tables. I remember how cold that damn table was. I wanted to jump off that thing so bad. And I'm laying there, and they just start, you can just hear all these packaging getting ripped open. You can hear them fire up the saw, and you're like, hey, put that thing away, And, you can hear people screaming numbers and yelling stuff. And you're like, man, this is chaotic. I was like, thank God I wasn't in battle with any of you people. You guys are, you know what I mean? This isn't shit, And there's a gal standing next to me, and she just keeps turning to me, and like she'd stick a couple things on my chest, right? And then she'd clip these things to me, and then she'd stick a couple more here. And I just remember like feeling so alone at this moment. Like there's so many people around me, but I felt so alone. Like I didn't know any of these people. Like I was probably going through one of the most chaotic days of my life. Everything that's going on, I really just wanted to say something to somebody. Like I even remember like the day that Land was killed. Like at least I had my friends to talk to. Like even in the midst of everything going on, you could be like, "Hey, you good?" Like even if you weren't, you're like, "Yeah, you good?" "Yeah, I'm good." Like just like, you know, like you knew that somebody was there. But like when I was laying on the operating table, like you had nobody. You know, I remember looking at the nurse and I was like, "Hey, you know, this is the first bone I ever broke." It's the only thing I could think to say to her. And she's like, "Yeah, you broke a lot of them, bud. But we're doing the best we can. You're gonna be all right." You know. And all of a sudden, this guy came over. And all of a sudden, I realized I was an anesthesiologist. And he's trying to put this damn mask on me. And I just keep shaking my head. And he's like, "What are you doing?" You know, I'm like kind of dodging him, you know. And I was like, "Bro, I had a bet with this guy for 5 minutes. You know, like I can't see a clock. Like right, yeah, like I'm sticking this one out, you know." And all of a sudden, the guy came over and he's like, "Hey, man, your 5 minutes is up. Like, you killed it. Like, you can go to sleep, you know?" And the lady goes, "Hey, you can start counting back from 10. And I thought, you know, fuck you. Like, that is not the last thing I'm thinking of as I roll out of this place because I didn't know if I was ever going to wake up again, you know? And I was like, I don't want, like, you know, like, I can just be like, "Oh, way to go, Jack. Like, you know, you're in heaven." All of a sudden, you're like, "Way to go, bud. Your last thought was one." You know what I mean? Like, you know? So I started trying to think all the greatest things I've seen flash before my eyes. And next thing you know, you just drift away, you know. And I woke up 6 days later, and my whole family was around me, and I was like, "Whoa, what are you guys doing in Afghanistan?" But I had no idea. I mean, it was just a flash for me, you know. And they're like, "All of a sudden, you're in Texas," and I was like, "Okay, this makes more sense." You know, like why you guys are here. I could just see my mom getting upset. You know, like who hurt my son? You know, I'm gonna take care of this myself. You know.
Man, what a
so I woke up, and the first time I had the ventilator in. And next time I woke up, I seen a nurse darting out, and I don't really remember. I think I had the ventilator in again. And the next time I woke up, my whole family was around me. Then I just remember everybody talking to me, and it was like it was kind of like Snoopy. If you ever seen Snoopy, everybody's like wah 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 like that. That's kind of like what it was like when everybody's talking to me, just trying to figure out what's going on. The drugs were wearing off and stuff, and it's kind of like an animal waking up, you know, like after they've been darted, you know. And you're just kind of like trying to figure out what's going on. And finally I remember my dad saying, "Hey, can you just say something?" You know, and I was like, literally the first words out of my mouth were, "What do I got to do to get out of here?" I did not want to be in the hospital.
And then like how long, so whenever you do wake up, like how many months are you in the hospital?
Right. So like, that's the first thing I thought. Like there's so many things that were like, the first thing was like, it just started coming back to me. I'm like, wait, why am I here? You know, and what is going on? You start looking at yourself, but everything's all bandaged up. You can't see nothing. You got a sheet on up to your chest, you know, you can't see what's left down there. And you're just kind of like, hey, where am I at? You know, what's going on? And you know, like the first time I wanted to use the bathroom, you know, I was like, hey, get me up, get me on the stool. I got to go, you know? And they're like, no, you just go in the bed. And I'm just like, whoa, what? Like, you know, and like, I'm like not doing that. Like I'll do a bedpan, but you know, like it just all these things you had to realize at first, like it just kind of starts hitting you really slowly, like really what's happening, you know? So I spent like 2 weeks in the ICU, and pretty much it was like all day surgery, come out. The whole time I had a feeding tube in, they just couldn't keep feeding me enough. So my body was burning calories. And I'd like come out, they'd be like, eat this, drink this. I'd pass out. And it's like, hey, man, we're taking you into surgery. That was like for the first 2 weeks, you know? And so basically they had to reconstruct my whole right arm. The guy literally saved it somehow. I mean, there's really no reason he should have. I mean, realistically, he should have just like snipped it with the scissors, peeled it over, stitched it up. But he's like, I just want to see if I could save it. So I literally drilled a whole like rod down my arm, drove this rod down my arm to rebuild everything too. Screwed everything back together, like took all the meat they could from everywhere else to lay down, basically skinned my whole front side to lay skin down on the arm, and just saved it. And I'm like so thankful for that. Like really at the time you don't realize like how much you're gonna need it, like to be able to drive or like pick up your kids or whatever, you know, off the ground or any of these things, you know. And my left arm was still in really rough shape. You know, they had to screw and put that whole thing back together and skin graft my whole basically forearm down. And my hand didn't work when I woke up. My right leg, they basically just tried to close up to give me as much femur as I could. I only have like 4 inches of femur left on that side. And then my left side, they basically at first took through the knee, and then they amputated up 4 inches higher to give me like a clean amputation, and just to make it easier for prosthetics and things like that. And in all, I spent 2 months in the hospital is all. And yeah, I mean, it's just crazy how fast, like, you know, once you start doing things, like how fast you start getting better. But you look back and you're like, man, how hard it was to do things back then compared to now. And it's just a really slow progression. But, you know, my book, I talk all the time about, you know, like when I woke up, I had to create the best new version of myself. Like nothing was the same. My dreams weren't the same. Nothing moved the same. Like all of my goals and ambitions were different.
You said your dreams were the same, were different.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't serve 20 years in the infantry anymore, you know, serving my country. I mean, at the time you think like all your dreams of like, I literally dream of just like, you know, going out in the field and setting up decoys. Like that's not a thing that's going to happen again. You're just not going to go and do a solo hunt. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like you're not going to wait out fly fishing ever again. Like just after work, throw your waders on quick, run out there, you know, and try to catch a few bluegills. Like it's just not going to happen. Like,
is that the hard part of where you were is like, okay, like everything that I knew about life is different now.
Every single aspect of it. Yeah, my hands didn't even move the same, you know, like I literally had to get my hands to work again, you know, like I couldn't hold a marker you know, to drop my name, you know, and I couldn't brush one of my first goals when I talk about is being able to touch my nose. That was one of my first goals. As soon as I was out of the ICU, was just to touch my nose, because as soon as I could touch my nose, I could eat again, I could drink again, I could brush my teeth. Like I could start doing something for myself again. I mean, that's how, you know, rough it was, you know. I mean, every time I had to go to the bathroom, somebody had to hold the urinal for me. I mean, it was just like all of a sudden I could start doing these things for myself again, start gaining some dignity back. And then you have guys roll in that were hurt 6 months ago. And they're like, bro, you'll be out of here in 2 months, and you'll be over here working out with us, and you'll be driving, and you'll be doing this, and we'll be go downtown and get drunk. Like, you know, and you're like, holy, you know, that was your motivation, you know, like you're like, oh, cool, I'm going to have a life outside of here, you know, like guys start reassuring you those things, and like you start seeing these things. And for me at first, really, it was I had so many people supporting me that really I couldn't stop trying to succeed every day because of the people I felt like I was going to let down, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you that this will be our 4-year anniversary of the podcast when this comes out Friday. And this is the hardest podcast that we've ever done for me as a parent. And when you talked about your parents being there, and what you sacrificed for our country, makes me so fucking pissed off at people that let this shit happen. And your bravery and your attitude is amazing. And I'm embarrassed about the selfish people that we have that don't appreciate what y'all done. And that doctor saved your life out there. And you never think about, unless you've been in the service, that what the medics do and those nurses and stuff in those places like Afghanistan and all the boys like you, that they've saved them lives.
Yeah, I don't think that people really understand, you know, like the guys that ran to me that day, you know, they could hear on the ICOM, you know, they're going over the radio like, hey, there's more IEDs out there. But they didn't give a shit, you know what I mean? So like I talk about all the time, like I have to get up every day to get out of bed. Every day when I get up, the first thing I do is I have to check my attitude because I got to fire up my wheelchair and jump into that thing, you know, like that's the first thing I do every morning. And sometimes that's hard, you know, like getting up and doing that. But all of a sudden you're like, damn, you know, what's harder is like just knowing that there's IEDs between you and one of your buddies, and you decide that you're going to run across that field and risk your life to try to save somebody else's that you probably don't think is probably going to make it anyways.
Right, yeah. It's not like, you know, he got a little bump on his knee. Like, he's fucking busted up. Like, I might not, even if I get there, the odds are he's probably going to slip away and die. Dead.
We just seen the land die the same way in October. It was no different, you know? And all of a sudden you see these guys run across the field. They risk their lives under fire to run to mine to save my life. I think, what kind of piece of shit would I be to not get out of bed and do my best today because those guys wanted to give me an opportunity to live this day, you know? Like, what kind of sack of shit would I be to lay here in bed all day and feel sorry for myself, you know? Yeah. Like, that would be, like, totally letting the Taliban win. That's how I was talking about, like, defining your life. And, like, if I would have been, and how easy it would have been to quit. Like, I had all my limbs blown off me, right? Like, how easy it would have been to lay there, and like that's what the Taliban wanted. They want Americans. Like, I have a hard time with these commercials sometimes where they make us wounded warriors look like we're we're like weak or like we're sad or we're depressed. And or like, Trace Atkins comes on and he's like, have you seen these Wounded Warriors? And I'm just like, this is like the biggest propaganda for the Taliban I've ever seen. Like, no, we're not sad. We're not depressed. Like we're still trying to live productive lives. We're still trying to be entrepreneurs. We're still trying to like crush dreams. Like they're just different now,
Yeah, they're different than what it was whenever I went in, but I still have goals and aspirations that I want to achieve. And that's what you said right there, because there is such a stigma around wounded veterans, and it's just like you've got to almost, the way they are portrayed in commercials is, well, we got to treat them with kid gloves and everything. And it's like, we've talked to you, the gentleman that we had on a couple weeks ago, the way that you guys talk to one another, y'all are brutal to one another. Like, y'all are not these delicate little kid glove type of people. Like, y'all are brutal to one another.
I think they want to portray you as Born on the 4th or whatever it is with Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they want everybody to think of. You're in a wheelchair, and I hadn't even seen the movie because I can't stand Tom Cruise, but they want to portray you as a weak, as a victim. That's the thing. No. They want to make you a victim. You're not a victim. What you did is you gave me a story to put with someone. I've never heard a story like this because I turn the TV off because I don't like to be sad. And you've made.
No, I don't. I always say keep your bad news. That's my slogan. Keep that bad news yourself. I don't want to hear that.
I'll come home and Michelle goes, "Do you want to hear something bad?" Well, hell no. I don't want to hear that shit. So I don't want to hear it. I don't watch Bambi because I don't want to feel bad for a deer that gets shot. I just don't like stuff that's sad. Well, your story is the saddest thing I've heard in a long time, and I've bawled like a baby here because it's real. And now when I see a guy come in here, and we have people that come here and you watch them walk and you can tell they got a prosthetic and stuff. And I always want to ask what happened, but I don't want to because I don't want to seem like an asshole. But you know what? Maybe if more people would ask them what happened and they tell you their story, you'd get a lot more respect out of it. Instead of being scared to say something to them, you would know, hey, that's what happened. And you've made me appreciate just not you, but everyone around you that helped in that deal. But I keep coming back to one thing. It's your parents. I can't imagine your parents making that drive or that flight to Texas to see their baby boy. That kills my soul to think about that.
Yeah.
Your poor mom.
And my poor mom, I was hurt in March and my brother left for Iraq in June,
Shit.
I mean, he was left right after I did, and it was one of those deals where it's, but we got something we're fighting for here. I mean, that's just kind of how we were raised, and that's kind of how we're growing up, and that's kind of, you stood for the national anthem. Like, you went out on Veterans Day, you went out and, you shook those guys' hand. On Memorial Day, you went to the cemetery and you looked at those graves and, you talked, you heard the stories about those people. And my dad never served, but my grandfathers both did. I knew my grandfather was a medic in Korea. I never met the guy. He had passed away before I was born. But, it wasn't really so much of that. But I remember growing up, you seen those guys walk into the Legion or at Veterans Day at school, right? When you were going to school, you see these guys carry the colors in, and the guy would go up there at the podium and he would tell his story, and you probably weren't even listening anyways. I probably wasn't either, You see these guys walk out, they carry the colors. And you see these guys in uniform, and all of a sudden you're kind of like, hey, I want to be one of those guys. Those guys are cool. You see them uptown after the parade drinking beers together, and you're like, oh, cool. They're still on this. They're on a team. Even though they're not playing softball, they're still hanging out all the time. That's kind of what inspired me. To seeing those guys all the time. And then I was just in junior high when the towers fell. But I remember seeing those. I remember vividly seeing these guys up on these rooftops, shooting down into stairwells, shooting over walls. Down into alleyways. And stuff like that. And I was like, man. If that's what defending freedom means, sign me up. I want to go take care of the people that don't like me, or don't like us, and even those people that we were just talking about, that maybe don't respect, or whatever our country and this and that and everything else. I mean, we still fought for those people, and it sucks that they don't see what we were fighting for, maybe in the same way or why we were fighting, it's I was just so grateful for the opportunity, and it was just incredible the people that I got to meet and the things that I got to learn, not only about myself, but I don't know that my life would have been as fulfilled if honestly this wouldn't have happened to me. Not saying I wanted this to happen by any means, but the things that I learned out there on the battlefield that day and the things that happened to me really changed my life for the long haul.
Well, and you have such a richer appreciation for just the small things in life. I mean, I always say that I'm kind of jaded in what I do as a hunting guide because, like, I hunt every day and, like, my filter is off in that regard.
Right.
A 25 bird hunt or whatever might be a great hunt to some people, but to me it's just like it's another day at the office. But
you probably wouldn't be in the situation that you're in, though, if you would accept being average either.
Correct. Well, that's true too. Yeah. But, I don't appreciate the sunrise like somebody would who it's their only morning to goose hunt, and they see the sun creeping up over the decoys, and they're like, this is fucking beautiful. I don't appreciate that because I see it every morning.
Honestly, that morning that we shot the Mossy Oak video, there was so many things about that day that made it one of the probably I still would. If you ask me right now what the greatest day of hunting I ever had, it would be that day that we shot that Mossy Oak video. I mean, we had birds landing on us as we were putting decoys out. I mean, it was just like, oh, you knew it was going to be good,
the ducks looked like they were all over you.
Oh, it was just insane. They just didn't stop. I mean, you could have shot as many as you wanted to that morning, and you could just pick out the ones you wanted to, and you're just taking good shots, and it was just phenomenal. And then it just kind of slowed down for a minute. Everybody drank a little coffee, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, did you hear that? It sounds like the geese are getting up. And the geese were just we were literally taking pictures of like, we had the camera set up, everybody standing up, had all the birds piled up, we're all getting behind it to take the pictures, and there's still geese knocking the camera over to take us, trying to land on top of us. I mean, it was absolutely the most insane thing I've ever seen. But between the ducks and the geese, all of a sudden my guide, Dave Hentosh, he's like, hey, look, there's a bear coming out down there. Bear walks out, and she gets straight downwind of us, and she stands up, and she kind of does like her shoulder sway, like trying to smell in the wind. And as she stands up, all of a sudden you realize the two cubs next to her, and they stand up, and they're doing the same thing. And I was like, oh my God, it's so cool. And they winded us, and they just took off running, And then all of a sudden we do take all of our pictures and stuff, and now we're going to head back to the lodge, and we're driving back, and my buddy Dave says, hey, look, there's a moose right up here in this radish field, And he's like, let's go around, see if we can get a better look at it. We drive up there, and Dave's like, he doesn't look good, So all of a sudden he calls the warden, and the warden comes over there, and sure enough, it was hit by a semi. And the warden comes out, puts it down, and we take it back to our camp, butcher the moose all afternoon up, and donate it for the warden service for their, feeding the hungry thing. And they take this moose, and then we go scout ducks that night and geese for the next day. And I was like, really, like, as a hunter, really, what more could I have wanted out of this day? I mean, it was just a foggy morning. It was like so perfect. All of a sudden, the sun comes up, burns the fog off. Beautiful sunrise, like you were saying. The birds couldn't have worked any better. Like, you get some moose action in there. It just really couldn't have been a more perfect day of hunting. And when I think about it, like, how lucky and how many mornings do you get like that, And, like, I'll talk about that for the rest of my life, So you really have to appreciate those days when you get them that are like that,
You've got such a good attitude. Now, you have two little boys, is that correct?
Yeah, I got two little boys. So, like, long story short on that, from the blast, you have a IED go off between your legs, your stuff takes a pretty good hit. And one of my boys swelled and ruptured. My other one took shrapnel real bad. And so right before we left, my wife's like, hey, we should go through some testing and, see how, all this pans out. Well, that's a story that we should do off the air sometime. I didn't know what giving a sample meant on the first day of lab. Should have came a little more prepared. This is before the iPhone. Come out of there pretty sweaty. And then of course when you set your cup on the counter, you just want to ask, like, hey, how do I measure up to?
Right. Is that a lot? Is that a little?
Cup fuller than the other guys. You know what I mean? Like, how full was the last guy's cup? You know what I mean?
What color was it? Also, like, am I healthy?
That's right.
Like, is it supposed to be that color?
Like, yeah. Am I dehydrated? So then we go through all this testing, find out we can't have kids naturally, and we're literally in vitro classes. And my wife's like, I don't feel good, And I'm like, well, drink some water, take some ibuprofen.
Suck it up.
I'm not a doctor. I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's hot in here. I don't know. So all of a sudden we get home, and she's just kind of like off, And I'm like, what's going on? And all of a sudden she heads over to Target, not nothing unusual, comes home. tears off right back to the bathroom. I'm like, what is she so upset about? So she comes out bawling. I'm like, I didn't even say anything. We've been married like a year. You know how that goes. I'm like, I didn't even say anything. And she's like, I'm pregnant. And I was like, oh, wow. And we moved back to Minnesota, had our first son, William, and he'll be turning 9 here in a couple weeks. And my youngest is 7. He'll be 8 this year. And literally as soon as we had William, he was like 9 months old. She's like, we should start trying again. And I was like, yeah, it could be, years before this ever happens again. And literally the first time, like, I think I got lucky, went on a hunting trip, came home, and she's like, I'm pregnant. I'm just like, stay away from me.
You got some super sperm now.
Yeah, I was expecting like, years and years of super hard work, trying to get that.
Well, let me tell you. So speaking like off the air, it took my wife and I a while to conceive both of our children. By the end, you're like, fuck, not again.
It's becoming a job.
Yeah, stay away from me. I don't want to see you naked again. You don't want to see me naked again. Like this, it's not after. Because it took us about a year for both of them. You're just like, oh, my God, I do not want to do this. I don't want to do this. Stay away. You go to your corner. I'll go to mine. But it's a fucking job.
But once you get it done, it's like the greatest thing in the world. I remember how scared I was leading up to having my first kid, and I'm just like, man, I wasn't this nervous going on some of the biggest air assaults that went on, and it's just like, oh, this is insane, and all of a sudden you're like, I must be so responsible for this thing, and yeah, it's crazy. But all of a sudden he's here and you're like, thank God, like he's the best thing that ever happened to me and totally changed my life, and we do so much fun stuff together, and I never really knew that I even liked kids until I had my own, and now I do a lot of things. I've seen some kids get hurt overseas, and it really changed me. And I realized that those kids never had an opportunity to make anything for themselves. They just were lost in this country with no purpose, And I thought, well, how can I make their lives have some kind of purpose? So I thought, when I get home, I'm going to make sure kids back home realize how just lucky they are just to be born in this country, to have the opportunity just to live here.
You're born you're on second base. If you look at the entire world, if you're born in America, you're on second or third base.
Easy.
I mean,
yeah. And you're a balk away from walking home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
If you're born with the right last name, you're a block away from walking home. You know what I mean? Like, it's so easy. You have the most, look at the president of Afghanistan. When Karzai was in, he got ran out. He's the most powerful person. I mean, so you're born here. You're just so lucky. So I started teaching firearm safety to the kids, and that's kind of where I started. And they had science fair on a Saturday. We were supposed to be doing a field day, and another school was shooting trap up there, and I'd never shot trap in my life. We had never had money to go to a gun club and shoot you were hand throwing all your clays, and you were never paying for a pheasant or none of that stuff. And so I took the kids out there, and they ever seen these guys shoot, and they're like, hey, this is pretty awesome. We'd like to do that. So I was like, okay. I'll let the school board know. So next thing you know, it's on the agenda, and next thing you know, they're like, who's coaching this thing? And everybody's looking at me, and I go, well, I guess I'm coaching a high school track shooting team. So, so we've been growing that now for the last couple of years, and I've really, it's so enjoyable because of the guys that I have around me that help and support me, and it's so fun to see these kids excel and be comfortable with handling a firearm. And you don't have to, never do you have to tell the kids, hey, keep your finger off the trigger. Hey, put your weapon on safe, and, hey, action's open. Like these kids just are some of these kids that come out are just so responsible, and they're so respectful, and it's just, they're really a joy to coach these kids. And, they come out and they're shooting one or two, and next thing you know, before they're done, they're shooting, they're missing only one or two per round. It's really fun to watch the kids grow, and it gives you an opportunity to talk to them about how lucky they really are.
Do you think that if this wouldn't have happened, you're in place, you'd be teaching kids to shoot guns?
No, not a chance. I'd be, well, I mean, and essentially, yeah. I mean, I guess I probably would, because I probably would be a drill instructor, or I would have been something in the military like that. I love to teach, and I love to explain things, and I love to tell stories, and I like to do those kinds of things, and I mean, every chance I had to do anything leadership role in the Army, I was all in. Like, let me, we need somebody for that. Oh, I'll do it. Everything was, I was just always looking for an opportunity to get better or learn something new, or, but at the same time, I love to teach those same things too,
I think God had a plan for you, just a really weird way of putting it in place, but your community is very, very, very lucky to have you in it, and those kids' lives that you touch in every day and doing things like that. We need that.
And kids need to see that. I think one of the things that I don't think kids see is the sacrifice that a lot of people have made on their behalf. You know, they're born into this country and everything is just it's so easy. And I get there's, everybody's got their own problems, but overall you got fucking air conditioning. Everybody's got a phone now. Everybody's got a TV and a refrigerator. Your life ain't that fucking bad in America.
No, kids today.
But they, seeing, your story and everything that you've done, it puts things into perspective for the kids that they might not have seen otherwise.
We don't even have poor. We don't even have poor people in our country anymore.
No.
We think they do, but people aren't poor no more. They have every safety net in the world and everything. There might be some people that struggle a little bit.
You've seen poor. Where you've been, you've seen fucking poor. And we're not. Everybody's got a refrigerator here.
This is no running water, no electricity. Every morning when the sun comes up, you watch them walk out to the canal to use the bathroom. I mean, you're seeing kids that are being born inside of mud huts. I mean, there is no hospital you go to have your kids in. You have them in your house. You know what I mean? Like, there is no midwife coming over. This is you and your friends, delivering this child. That's a village, and if something doesn't go right, they don't have tools to even make this happen. You know what I mean? This is just all off of passed down generational. I mean, this is extreme third world where I was at.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
you're walking across poppy fields and marijuana fields. I mean, that's what it is down there. That's all they do.
You on marijuana
and poppy,
and opium.
You're one of the things that I think this podcast has really, really shined a lot of light on for a lot of people other than just me is how well our military handled the medical stuff. Because all you ever hear about is bad things of the VA, and I'm sure there are a lot of bad things of the VA. Because we got a bunch of fuckhead politicians that don't give two shits about nothing but themselves. But you was in Texas in 6 days. And to me, that is a remarkable thing.
Did it take 6 days for you to get there, or you were out 6 days?
Yeah.
You were.
Yeah, I mean, I was out. Yeah,
how long did it take for you to get to San Antonio?
6 days. I was from the time I was hurt. It took me 6 days. I went from Kandahar to Bagram. To launch stool. I stopped in DC, but I never got off the plane. And every time I was moved to a different place, I had so much mud and dirt and debris packed inside all my wounds. They were just trying to wash me out the first few days, trying to get me cleaned out. And every time I did that, my vitals would just tank, and they'd think I was about to die, and they'd be like, just get him, move him to the next place. They got better care there. Move him to the next place. They got better care there, and finally, when I got to Texas, once I woke up, I never once ever thought I was gonna die until I remember one day I was laying in the hotel or in my hospital room, and everybody was around me. And the doctor came in, he pulled everybody out, and I was like, "Why do you have to put? Why can't I hear what's going on?" You know what I mean? Like
you're talking about me, motherfucker.
Yeah, that's right. You know what I mean? And I was like, don't worry about it. It's nothing important. This and that. And he pulled everybody out, and they're like, "Hey, we're kind of concerned he hasn't grieved yet." Because a lot of guys go through a pretty severe grieving process, and they're kind of like, that's just who he is, and I thought for sure he's going out there to tell him, like, hey, he's not going to make it another day or something,
Would you be sad?
And, exactly. And they came in, I mean, they offered me antidepressants and stuff, and I was like, no, I got to get this shit figured out without drugs because I don't want to be on that stuff forever, you know what I mean? I got to figure this shit out on my own, this is
Did you ever take any antidepressants? Never.
No.
Never.
Once.
Did
Refused.
You ever go through a period of the depression that they thought that you should have been going through at that time?
Still waiting for it.
Really?
What is there to agree? I mean, I never really understood sometimes I never want to come off as cold, you know what I mean, or like insensitive to the guys that have these problems, but like I don't even like really talking about PTSD because I don't really suffer with it, and I feel like it's kind of slap in the face to the guys that do struggle with it because there's guys that didn't go through a lot of what I went through that struggle with it. And like the guys that seen me bleeding out on the battlefield that day have it worse than I did because of what they had to see, but they don't see the life that I'm living now either.
Have you talked to Doc ever since that day?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I talk to him, here and there periodically, but honestly, none of us are really that close anymore. Everybody kind of moved on with their lives and stuff, and it's kind of like when you hang out like around those guys, you tend to talk about the deployment a lot, and some of the things that didn't go well, and you kind of get to the point in your life where you're just like, I'm kind of done with that chapter in my life. I think that's where a lot of guys get to, But but like I'm super lucky though. Like I don't struggle with the PTSD and things like that. Like I was saying, and I'm just fortunate of that. But I think a lot of times, like when I was saying about like the grieving of losing my legs and not really feeling like I have PTSD and things like that, it's just like I know my legs aren't coming back. I just have to move on. Like you find yourself in these situations all the time. Like life is just complex problem solving. Everything is just a problem. How are you going to solve it, right? And I just was like, okay, well, I can't walk anymore. Well, how am I going to move? Okay, it looks like I need to learn how to use a wheelchair, right? I was just like always, what's next? I was just focused on what's next. And like if it was broken, it was in my past. I wasn't going to dwell on the things that had happened to me. Like it doesn't do any good. It's a waste of energy. I don't have any mental or physical capacity to deal with any more BS. Like why am I going to sit here and be focused on something that I cannot change, right? And it's just like I still think I'm one of the baddest, MFers rolling the planet. So like I'm not afraid of like somebody coming up behind me and popping me in the back of the head. If somebody comes through that door and their guns are blazing, they better hit me first. Cause you know what I mean? Like that's how I feel. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I just remember one time, a guy said to me, he's like, when it's your day to die, there's no man that's going to save you. And when it's your day to live, there's no man that's going to kill you, and it's just like, I believe that, to the core of my heart, whatever that thing may be, it may be, but man, if you can survive, that's why I always tell guys, if you can survive an IED, what are you worried about?
Yeah, it's not, you're not going to get scared of some fucker at the Walmart threatening your ass for damn sure. What do you,
I'll be your
my question is, no, and then I fucking lost it.
The prosthetics. Have you, you hate them?
I always tell the guys that are on prosthetics, I'm dead serious when I ask this. I'm not being a jerk. I'm always just saying, do those things make you happier? It's just they're miserable to get around on. Like I had to walk with a cane, ties up my only free hand that I had. It takes forever to get anywhere. I feel like everybody else's life revolves around me when I'm on. I'm like, dope, Jack's on prosthetic. Do you need anything? Can you get in here? Can you? When I'm in my wheelchair, nobody's ever like, do you need anything? Because I'm just me and I do my thing. You know what I mean? It's just like I always say, thank God your happiness doesn't come from your legs, because I'd be the saddest, sucker you'd ever met in your life, But, it's just like, this is how I get around. This is how I do life now. And really, I still do everything I ever wanted to do. I honestly, we talked about that earlier, like, my dreams, everything changed. I still do all the same things I want to do. I just do them a little bit differently now. I found out that I just have to be, when everybody's putting out decoys, the new guy, I just tell them, hey, that's not right. Move it over a foot. You know what I mean? Like, and just be that guy now, always whenever somebody's up taking a leak, get down, and doing that stuff, that's me now, that's my
question,
job.
And I remember my question. So, it seems like we hear more about PTSD now than we did, and I asked this to Joe Wesner a couple weeks ago. We hear more about PTSD now than we did with the World War II veterans. Why do you think that is? Because
there's a few reasons. I feel like PTSD and drug addiction have a lot in common, right? Okay. You can never get sober until you're ready to get sober, right? You can never fix your PTSD until you're ready to fix your PTSD. You can go get all the therapy you want, but until you talk about the hard stuff, nothing's ever going to change, right? Like nothing's ever going to get better. Like I feel like a lot of guys go in and they're like, hey, how is everything going? Oh, everything's going pretty good, but they don't really tell like, hey, things aren't going well, And I think if everybody knows that if you serve, you can go get mental health if you need it. And I'm an advocate for it. I mean, I've had more therapy than most people you're ever going to talk to, But I feel like that's also why I feel like I can be. It's just not something that drags me down. It doesn't slow me down every day from the things that I had to see and go through, right? But I feel like we see a lot. I feel like there's a lot of money too that can be made off of PTSD, and I feel like some of that goes on. You know what I mean? You see these nonprofits that are doing a lot of good, but like, is anybody looking at how much these people are? Who's at the top of this thing, and where's the money going? Is it really going to PTSD research and helping guys get the care that they need, or are we just really running a marketing campaign with a CEO? You know, that's what I want to know for a lot of these organizations. You know, but I believe there's a lot of them out there doing good, like Patriot Catfishing. I always say the outdoors are one of the best places to heal, and that's where I did a ton of my healing. You know, there's nonprofits like Patriot Catfishing. You know, I love going catfishing, catching these monster catfish. You can't go on the water, have a bad day, and, you know, not want to go back and take on the world. You can't go out and sit out in the woods without your cell phone or anything and watch a bear roll into a bait and tell me that you can't think about anything else except for that bear. You know, I mean, like, that's what you do is you go out in the woods, you focus on those things, you know, you have those thoughts. All of a sudden you have an animal in front of you and you're just ready to move on with your life. You know, you had to process some of those things. And that's why I think it's so important, you know, and I'm a vice president of a nonprofit up in Maine now called Veterans Afield, and we take guys out moose hunting, waterfowl hunting, doing all those things, and it's something that's super close to me and important to me, and I feel like there's so much healing to be done in the outdoors, and I think that's where guys need to go do it.
So do you think that because of the pharmaceuticals and the drugs that we give everybody that comes over that says they're suffering from PTSD, do you think that because you didn't take them, maybe you didn't go down that downward spiral? What I'm getting at is, do you think that the drugs are hurting more than they're helping because they put a Band-Aid and guys aren't necessarily dealing with the problems? They're just kind of masking it, and it's still always there.
Yeah, pushing it down the road. Yeah, you just push it down the road. I mean, I had to deal with everything right now in the rod, right? Like, you know, you look at those guys that all came home from World War II, you know, like they didn't go to a bunch of counseling. They didn't do anything. They went down to the VFW. They bitched to their buddies about what was going on, and they went home, you know, hugged their kids, went to bed, woke up the next day and opened their business, opened the doors of their business. Like they had other stuff they had to do. They were just that's probably why you've seen these guys had Legion Club meat raffles and all this stuff going on every night. They had something going on, and they were so social, and they were doing these things, and they were running businesses. And if you look at the ownership of businesses when veterans came home from World War II compared to now, it's insane, you know?
So that makes everybody started a business when they came home.
Yeah, they did. Okay. You know, it is running a business. Who has time to think about all the bad shit that happened in your life? And when you're trying to run a business, you're just trying to keep this thing from not failing tomorrow, you know?
That makes sense. I've never thought of it that way. I'm not speaking disrespectfully now, but things are so easy now to where when guys do come home, they don't necessarily have to go out and, you know, make something of themselves outside of the military because there's benefits.
Another thing,
and like I said, I'm not trying to speak disrespectfully or anything like that, but
right.
That's where we are.
Another thing that we deal with today, and I get hit on this all the time, and not all the time, but it happens multiple times a year. These fly-by-night wounded warrior places that the guy shows up and he's driving a brand new wrapped $75,000 pickup. And what do you do for a living? Oh, I take care of this foundation right here. Well, all he's doing is he's taking people hunting and fishing all the time on someone else's dollar, and he's drawing $100,000 a year salary, and they're paying all his bills. Well, I don't want to sound like an asshole, but a guy like me, I get sick of that crap. I want to see I don't want to see something bad. But do you see what I'm saying? I want to help. I want to help someone that's really helping the guys that have done what you've done, not some jackass that's trying to be a frat daddy till he's 55 years old and getting rich off, or not getting rich, but making a damn good living, getting to have fun at someone else's expense. And you see that because if you'd have done that shit after World War II, they'd have lynched your ass at the end of the block, and that'd have been the end of it.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. You know, and like I said, those guys that came home from World War II, I mean, they had their lawns to mow, they had baseball practice to coach, they had all these things going on, you know, and now, you know, you guys come home and they're living off the GI Bill for 4 years, going to college, like, you know how college is. I mean, really, first couple of years, you probably, you know, you can chill out for a long time. Your bills are paid. Like, you don't have to work after school. Like, yeah, it's a really good thing that you earn, but at the same time, like, what are you doing to fill that time? Are you being as productive as possible? Are you maximizing your purpose? Because when you go for like, literally, when I talk about putting on the uniform every day, that honestly meant something to me. When I slapped that American flag on my shoulder and I rolled out the door that day, I went out the door acting like I was carrying the weight of the country on my shoulders, right? And then all of a sudden you come home, and you're like, I can leave in sweatpants, I can go in a t. You just start losing all your pride that you used to carry. You used to shave every single morning, you'd work out every single morning, and now you're like, I just don't feel like it today. You know what I mean? You start doing these things that are not of character for who you've been for however long, and all of a sudden it's super easy to look at yourself and go, I'm not who I used to be, and it looks really, really dark for a minute.
Right.
I feel sorry for the kid. Now, this sounds bad probably too, in which I do this shit all the time. I feel sorry for the kid that's raised in the inner cities, that's in the military, going through the same thing you do, that has no love for the outdoors and stuff, because I don't know what the hell they're going to do to feel. Outdoors feel such a void for people like us that means something to. A kid in the inner cities is never introduced to the hunting and fishing. Can you imagine going through all this and not
going
having
back to fucking downtown New York City?
Yeah, what are you going to do? You're going to sit and watch
Francisco?
somebody sell crack on the side of the road? Yeah. I mean, there's nothing. That's a horrible deal.
I say all the time, my hometown has like 600-800 people in it. I mean, it's a tiny little town. There's not anybody in town that doesn't know what happened to me, and what I've gone through and things, and I'm so grateful for that. I mean, I couldn't imagine going back to a city where nobody knew who you were, nobody knew what you had gone through, nobody really ever cared. I mean, my whole town was out like surrounding my parents' house the night that I was wounded with a candlelight vigil and all this. Like, if you're from the city, that's not happening. Nobody even knows who their neighbors are. Nobody really cares about anybody else, and like, it's sad, that other parents had to go through that too, but like, I'm so thankful that it sounds shitty, but if something bad has to happen to you, you want to be from somewhere that I'm from.
You want to be somewhere where people will rally around you, and you'll have a great support system
where everybody knows your name.
Yeah, you need that.
So you lost your thumb and your half of your index finger, all of your index finger.
Yeah, so I lost my thumb, part of my index finger, and then part of my ring finger on this side, and then my ring finger on this side was tore off pretty much.
And they just reattached it?
And like my arms this reattached it. Yeah, like my arms are all chewed up pretty good,
Did they do skin grafts off your arm, or that's just?
Yeah, that's all stomach. Yeah, it's all stomach for my stomach.
That's crazy.
Yeah. All the way.
Amazing how they can do things.
Were you right-handed before? You were?
Yeah, so everything, like every single thing in life was flipped on me, I mean, now whenever I go out shooting sporting class, I got to put damn chapstick on my glasses,
because you're still right-eyed on.
Right, I got to shoot. Yeah, I got to shoot left-handed now, and like just doing stuff like that, It's just like, and then but it's the easiest thing too when like you're out in the blind, and you're just been ripping on your buddy all day next to you when he misses, and then you miss that one. He says something like, "Dude, I'm shooting offhand, off eye right now." You know what I mean? Like, you're making fun of the guy. You're making fun of the guy with no legs. You know what I mean?
Like, you're gonna make fun of me? You know what I've done for you?
That's right. That's what I always say. Like, I can talk so much shit because, like, if I beat you up, you got your ass beat by the guy in a wheelchair. But if you beat me up, everybody's like, "Oh, way to go, tough guy! You beat up the guy in a wheelchair." So I can't.
Are you fucking happy now? You beat the guy in the wheelchair. Really? That's your benchmark?
When I was a kid growing up, there was a guy that used to race cars down the street from us, and he had one fucking arm. And he was a fucking asshole. He'd start fights with people all the time. And my dad used to say that shit all the time. He goes, "Well, fuck, ain't nobody going to whip his ass because you can't win in the deal. He's going to beat your ass because he's a mean fucker and he hit you with that little stump. But if you hit him, you're the asshole that beat up the guy with one arm. So you can't win."
Yeah,
so,
right.
You got a great outlook on life and a great personality, but
you wrote a book after all this.
Yeah, I did. It's a long story. I mean, I tried on so many different things after I got hurt, man. Tried broker insurance, and I was like, man, I can't sit in an office. This isn't for me, And I was going to go to school for accounting before that, and I was like, what are you doing?
You got too much personality to be an accountant.
Yeah, I was like, what are you doing? And I had all these things, and then I left there and I started, screwing around training dogs all the time and doing that thing and running the hunt test. And I was the first guy to ever qualify a senior level hunting dog out of a wheelchair through AKC, and then that was with me. That was with Moose. And then
now is Moose chocolate? I don't even since Moose.
No, he's black.
Like I'm all fucked up because of the mossy oak thing. So he's not he's not the chocolate.
It was brutal. It was brutal because like the guy that I trained with, like the way that Chris Smith, the way that he taught me everything. I mean, our dogs were. I mean, these are field trial quality dogs. So like, when you receive a bird, they come in a certain way, and this dog would run behind me, and I'm like, oh man, dude, I'm gonna look like an idiot on TV, not with this dog coming in like this. And like when he healed, I'm like, this isn't even like, can I have a healing stick or something to square his dog up, Like I had a lot of things about it. And I was really kind of like frustrated at first, but I was like, you know what, like we need to push beyond all the things that happen, like make the best out of the situation you're in, just fix the problem, So
it looked incredible. I thought he was Moose.
Yeah, and I had this dog, and it was great though. But like, when I jumped on one point, had to jump on another, he wouldn't have made the flight, So it's like, oh, what do you do, And it's like he's your baby, You're not just gonna be like, hey, I'll catch you in Maine, Like, no, I want him on the same plane as me, And so he didn't end up getting to go up there and stuff. And no, I mean, me and him we've hunted everything. I mean, he's picked up so many birds for me, and I had so much fun. And honestly, like at the time where I was at in my life, like that's what I needed. I missed going out and training every day like the military. We'd get up every morning, we'd go train, and like when it'd be hot in the afternoons, we'd work on the pond and stuff and take a nap. And as soon as the sun started going down, we'd go out and train. And anytime you'd have like those bad thoughts from Afghanistan start creeping in your head, it's like, well, buddy, guess we're going to run some blinds, It's like when you have a retriever like that, I mean, you can never run enough blinds. You can never run enough marks. You can never go out and do enough anything. I mean, you can just do, just run to a pile. I mean, you can do that. I mean, the easiest things, you can do. And those things will take your mind right off of whatever you were just thinking about. I mean, so if you have a lab sitting around, I mean, there's no reason you can't find something to do, besides get your thoughts off whatever you're thinking. Do you
think, and you mentioned this in the video, but do you honestly think like he could tell your mood and like, okay, like he needs a hug right now? And I'm going to go over there and...
Oh, all the time. Like, I'll be over in the garage, and I'll be, like, just sitting over there thinking about something frustrated, and all of a sudden his head's nudging into your lap, like, come on, Dad, get on those ears, I like it, And you're like, all right, all of a sudden it's just like you just grab Bumper, and you just put it in front of him and say, fetch, and he jumps up and grabs it, and you're like, all right, let's go play a little bit. Let's go throw some bumpers, And I got a short hair, too, and... he's just a wild man. He's just crazy. He's got the most cool personality. He's just a wild man. I enjoy spending time with him too, and just training with him. And there's just so much to do with him that, like whenever I get phantom pains, from my legs being gone, like the only thing that really makes it feel better and kind of ends is heat and pressure, right? So it's like I'd always just jump up in a chair, and if I ever have phantom pains, and he knows, he just comes and lays right up on top of my legs, and I just pass out with him on my legs, and that helps so like. 7 out of 10 times he makes my phantom pains just go away,
And he just instinctively knows, like, I need to get up there.
He just knows that I'm like sitting up there and I'm wincing, and they just keep hitting me, and I'm jumping, and next thing you know, he's over there knowing that I'm not doing well, and then all of a sudden he's like, come on, let me up, and next thing you know, he's laying on my lap, and you're rubbing on him, and all of a sudden you're watching the TV and rubbing on him, all of a sudden you're like, hey, those damn things went away, and they just kind of fade away without you even noticing, because he distracts you from them too, that's part of the battle, is just stop trying to focus on that hot spot in your nerves that's bugging you right now,
Their sixth sense, seventh sense, whatever is amazing, because my grandfather trained dogs, Jeff's dad, and we trained my dog Lou together, and he was always like, you need to the dog is getting as much from you right now as you're giving to the dog. Like he feels your sense, he feels your emotions. And if you're frantic with your hand movements or the way you're talking to the dog, like the dog feels it. So like the way that they can know what you need and be there, it's amazing. Because I hear of that so many times, like, a widow or whatever, they get a dog and it's like the dog fucking changed their life because they can sense what they need.
Yeah. I mean, I just remember too, like there's so many times like, you could roll up to the line with your dog on lead, going up to run a couple blinds or a couple marks in a blind, and the first time you go up there to run your first one, you're shaking so bad, and the dog's like, what mark do you want me to pick up? Right. Your hands bouncing between marks, and this and that, and he's like, what's going on? And heck, by the time you walk up there on the last one, you're like, you just talk him off it. You're just like, no, man. And he bounces over to the next one. You're like, that's it, moose, and then he just goes out and drops his head right on the virgin, and just. There's just that confidence. I mean, they need that from you too, because they're just like, hey, man, whatever you want me to do, I will do. But I just need you to be clear on what you need me to do. You know what I mean?
I need clear instructions here.
I want to ask you about a hunting trip. You shot a mountain lion.
Yeah. Oh man, that was a trip.
How hard was it in the chair to get around?
There was no chair. That was my buddies, a sled and a ranger. That's how we got to that mountain.
They hauled your ass around like Santa Claus on a sled?
Oh, it was wild. So how this whole thing comes together is I'm out in Buffalo County, Wisconsin, trying to stick a giant whitetail with my buddy Kyle Bushman. He's got a bunch of properties out there, and he always lets me go anywhere I want out there. And now I always track around out there trying to shoot a monster, the 30-pointer. And he goes, hey, this guy's coming out. I traded him a mountain lion hunt for a whitetail hunt. And I was like, that's awesome, And he's like, he's coming out these dates. And I'm like, oh, I got to meet this guy. And he's find out he's a veteran and everything. And me and this guy started hunting together. One of the coolest guys I ever met. And Dan Mayer. And just one of the greatest guys you ever meet. He had hounds and everything. He's telling me about running these mountain lions, throwing his dogs across the river, and all this wild stuff. And I'm like, oh man, that's wild. I was like, that would be awesome, but not realistic, And he's like, oh, we could easily do it in eastern Montana, where those aren't even mountains, those are hills, And I was like, I don't know, I've seen them, and I'm from the Midwest, a hill to me is, I don't know, a couple hundred feet, And so all of a sudden he's like, it's coming around, and they go, hey, we want to take you out there. And so literally this Wes, his last name's skipping my mind right now, Colstrip, Montana. Never met him before. He says he's got places to go. They've cat hunted before. And these guys are just telling me, I've never talked to this guy in my life. We're just going to stay at his house. Like, this is just a bunch of stuff that's got to come together and work. And, and so it's like, whatever, it's, if not, we're just going to go drive to Montana. Drive out there was absolutely insane. Weather was horrible. We left like the day after Christmas. And of course, me and how good I am at logistics stuff, I ordered my permit like 3 days before, and I click mail it to me, and then I didn't think Christmas mail, didn't think anything, doesn't show up in time. So like, oh, I'm driving to Montana without my tags, and I'm gonna pass it somewhere along the way. And get out there, get to this place. It works out, everything's perfect. When we got out there, the guys had already put a cat up that night. They found a good track, cut it. And the cat slick treed, so cat wasn't up the tree that the dogs were on. They said, hey, it's got to be a good cat. He'll probably hold up in here tonight. We'll run this again in the morning. We'll find him. But that's a good cat. So I was like, dang, we have 2 weeks planned for this. And so we were up there, and the next day we wake up, and I got to go to the hardware store first because I got to print out my dang tag. And we rolled down to the hardware store. Hardware store opens up. I print off my tag. It was like some kind of fiasco because I had to have an affidavit because there couldn't be 2 tags out there floating around. I started this whole thing, and I was like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. Like, why didn't I just buy it when I got here? Like, looking back, like all these things. Anyways, I finally get a tag printed off. We jump in the truck. We start heading out to where they were scouting at. On the way, we get a call, and they're like, hey, we found a good track. We just need to get you here so we got your tag here so we can cut the dogs, Because the other guy's tag that they were running on the night before had left. He couldn't come on today's hunt or whatever. So we're driving out there, and we roll up, and all of a sudden we pull up this farm, and I meet this guy named Buckshot. And he's like, yep, that's my property back there. The boys are back there, and it sounds like they got a good cut, track to run, all this stuff, And I was like, awesome. So I start throwing on all my gear, and we drive all the way down these tiny little roads and stuff, and everything's plowed. Pretty good getting back there. And we come up to the road, and the guys are like, they see me pull up, and they just cut the dogs loose. And we hung out there for probably like, I don't know, a couple hours. And finally, my buddy's like, hey, I think they got this thing treed, And I was like, no way. And so a couple guys took off on snowmobiles and trying to make their way up in there, and they really couldn't get up in there. And then they started walking in from wherever they could get up to and all this. And finally get up there, and they radio back, really good cat. Let's try to get this. Let's try to get in here. So they get a fire going underneath the tree and everything, and they're just going to keep the hounds tied to 2 hounds tied to the tree, 2 bay dogs, on opposite sides, whatever, trying to hold this cat in the tree. And we started calling around, trying to figure out a path to get up there, this and that. And finally we find this road that we're going to drive up to the top and try to get to the top of this divide, right, and make it work from there. And the guy wouldn't let us drive up the road. We could go up halfway, and finally we get up to this as far as we could go. on side-by-sides, and we just had to bail out, and the guys just put me in a sled, and they started pulling me, and I was just trying to do like a 2-arm paddle as hard as I could. We get to places that were like just too deep, and I'd bail out, and there's times you're like sliding down and just like, well, I'm just gonna go for it, you know. And it was wild. I mean, and this is like this, swear to God. So all of a sudden we finally get up there. I'm smoked. I'm winded. I'm sitting on a ledge, and the cat's in front of me in the tree, and we're like eye to eye level, right? But there's probably a 60-foot drop between me and him, you know. And I'm just and I remember looking at this tree for like 5 minutes. We're like, right there, he's in this tree, Jack, right here. And I'm looking, and I'm like, I don't see him. I don't see him at all. They're like, he's right in front of you. I'm like, this tree right here. Yes, this tree. I look up it. I'm like, yeah, I've been raccoon hunting. I mean, you look up a tree, you see him. I'm just like, how do I not see 100-some pound cat, just hanging out in this tree? And all of a sudden I was like, oh, there he is. I remember locking eyes with him, and I remember feeling that feeling in my soul. I know right where my soul sits after that thing looked at me. Like, you can feel it warm up. It is the eeriest, creepiest, one of the worst feelings I've ever felt in my life was having that mountain lion look dead at me like, try me.
Motherfucker.
It was so creepy, so creepy.
Fucking
he's
eyes
probably
just
thinking,
looking right into your soul, like,
you better
try
be,
me, motherfucker.
He's like, that's a half a man.
That's half a man. You better be damn glad there's 60 foot of canyon between me and you, buddy.
That's right. So I got these 2 sticks, these 2 walking sticks. I'm trying to get them set up to make a shooting rest out of them. Man, I'm telling you, I could not get set up on them. My buddy Brandon, he was in the 101st too. I never met him before this trip, but he lost his leg below the knee. And he's getting all frustrated. He's like, come on, man, get on this thing and let's take a shot. And all of a sudden, my buddy Bushman hands me a rifle. I'm like, hey, Kyle, what do you got this thing 0 to? He goes, I don't know, man. I haven't shot it in 2 years. Good luck. But it gets better. So I'm trying to get on these dang shooting sticks. I'm trying to get set up to shoot it, and I can't get on it. And all of a sudden, my buddy Brandon's like, dang. He rips his leg off. He sits it next to me. I drop the magazine well on his prosthetic leg, and I was like, this is perfect. Squeeze it off. Hit the cat. It dives out of the tree, runs up another drainage, goes 1,000 yards, and I was like, well, boys, I guess you're pulling me another 1,000 yards. Yeah, we rolled over there, got up there, and ended up shooting the cat down in that tree, and he died up in the tree. And my friends were like, well, now you got to go up and get him. And I'm like, oh, man, I'm going to have to Redfern grow this thing and chop the tree down. I have a better chance of that,
Well, what an awesome story. You have been an excellent guest.
Yeah.
And we'd sure like to have you on again sometime. And if you ever get down this way, we'd sure love to have you come out here and hunt with us.
Hey, so if people want your book, where can they get it?
Yeah, so we got all kinds of stuff going on. We you can go to my book, jackzimmermanmn.com. And we got a race team too that we go out and race all over the Midwest, all the way down to Texas even. And we go out and raise awareness for patriotism, dirt track racing, and different veteran nonprofits. And check out our website, warfaremotorsports.net. And we do a really good stock car bikini calendar. I'll make sure to get you guys mailed some here. And
who's your favorite sprint?
And all the
who's your favorite sprint car driver?
Kyle Larson.
He's badass. Okay, who's the second one? Because he's everybody's first.
Oh man, baddest of all time, I would say Steve Kinzer probably. Who goes down the backstretch and opens up a visor and lights a cigarette going down the backstretch under caution. That's my guy.
Mine's Rico Abreu is my second one now.
Rico's good. I mean, Donnie Schatz. I mean, who doesn't love a Donnie Schatz, But, I really like the late model world. That's where I like to hang out when I'm not doing the stock car thing. And, I just honestly love racing. I always joke, hell, I'll watch 2 ducks race in a pond,
I like dirt car racing. I don't care much for anything else, but I'm a Kyle Larson guy too. Man, we've appreciated you getting here. So it's jackzimmermanmn.com, like Minnesota. jackzimmermanmn.com.
Yes, sir.
Y'all check him out. Get his book. He's a hell of a story. God bless you, man.
You got such a great attitude.
You do.
I mean, you really.
No, I appreciate you guys coming on the show, and I really appreciate letting me come on here and talk about my book a little bit and share some of my stories with you guys, and thank you for just helping me raise awareness for all the things that I'm working on, and really appreciate everything.
Do you go to Game Fair in Anoka every year?
Oh yeah. Yeah, pretty much every year.
We may be up there this year. We were going to go last year, and I got masked out, and I didn't want to do the mask shit. We ended up
for sure.
You know how the politics are in many hopeless. But
they didn't do it the year before, did they? Last year they took.
No, they didn't have it.
Take a year off.
Well, me and Andy probably will be up there this year. Yeah, I'd like to buy you dinner one night if we could.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Anytime you guys are up this way, or if I get down towards you guys, for sure, I'll let you guys know.
It's been a pleasure.
If you see Dane anytime soon, you tell him we miss him, and he still has a place here if he wants to come back.
So we used to call his wife Kitten, is what we used to call her. Kitten.
You're gonna stir up some shit.
Kitten was the name in the because when they before when Dane was down here, they were just dating. And she was not a fan of Andy.
No.
For whatever reason. I'm a charming individual.
Yeah, because you're an asshole, because you called her Kitten.
She was not So I've got a buddy, his name is Ryan Fawkes, and he was down here he was working at the same time, and we picked on people a little bit, and I gave her the nickname. Ryan and I gave her the nickname Kitten.
She liked Ryan, but she didn't like you.
She did not like Ryan. She accepted his Facebook friend request way before she accepted mine. But Kitten was her nick. So if you see Steph, call her Kitten and tell her it's from the Big Honker Boys, and she'll fucking roll her eyes. But Jack, it has been a pleasure talking to you, my friend. We would love to have you back on the podcast anytime. It's been a lot of fun, and go get your book. Go check out his book. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. I appreciate
it. Bud. God bless you and have a great day.
You be safe up there.
You too.
Bye. Good podcast.
Great podcast. What a way to do our 4th year birthday.
I did not realize it was 4 years.
I didn't until I looked at my phone a minute ago, and I was like, today's
4 years.
Because I told Mom, I said, well, I was going to do a cake and have a big deal for us. And I said, because tomorrow, but we're going to be out of town. We're going to be at Ducks in Fort Worth. So if you see us at Ducks, come by and say hi. Check out our sponsors there. Shin Gear will be there. Gundog Outdoors will be there. Pacific Calls. Boss. Shin Gear. Lucky Duck. Dirty Duck Coffee. Did I forget anybody? I think I got everybody there.
And the Big Honker Podcast will be there. I will not be there. Jeff has pimped me out. He has pimped out my turkey hunting services. Unless we shoot out early, I probably won't be there. But the birds have been acting a little squirrely. Very, very quiet this year. And we have talked to a lot of people in the state of Texas, and they have all said the same thing, that the birds are very, very, very quiet. So Zach will be there.
Yep.
Show Zach some love. Jeff will be there. Come up. Shake his hand, take a picture, whatever, and maybe I'll be there on Sunday. But please go check out our sponsors. Spend a little bit of money with them.
Tell them you listen to the podcast. Great
they're
guys.
Behind us. We're behind them, and we want to see everybody do very, very well. Go check out Jack's book if you're interested in that. I don't remember what the website is, but it was earlier. So go check it out. And
Jack
check out
Zimmerman, MN.com.
All right. I think that's pretty much it, isn't it?
Thank y'all. God bless y'all. Thank you for 4 years. And
4 years. An election cycle has gone by. Doesn't feel like it.
No, we had a great president. Now we got a horrible one.
Did you, before we get off, did you see that video?
Of Biden wandering around?
Obama, Kamala, Biden?
Yeah.
I felt bad.
I did. I actually did, too. I felt sorry for the dumbass.
He looked like a guy he looked like a mental patient that did not know where to go.
That's because that's what he is. Did you see where, Super Snatch, Pelosi's got COVID now? Yeah. And she was with all them yesterday.
Yeah.
Good thing. But she's vaccinated, thank God.
3 times.
Yeah.
3 boosters. So, all right, everybody. Get out of here. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you later. Go check out all of our great sponsors. Get over to Ducks. See all the people that are over there. Boss Shot Shells, Shin Gear, Gundog Outdoors, Pacific Calls, Lucky Duck. And I think that's all that's going to be there. Alpha Outdoor Specialties also sponsors the podcast. Dirty Duck Coffee, Looking Glass Duck Club Podcast, Gundog Outdoors, Steak Plains Meat, Stanfield Hunting Outfitters, Bangtail Whiskey, and Dive Bomb Industries.